So as we're trying to get our first Hearthstone Classic tournament underway, I wanted to take a bit of time and go back to Blizzard's first tournament for Hearthstone ever, which was called the Innkeeper's Invitational. It was back in beta. They had invited 8, I guess, Blizzard personalities, online personalities, to come compete. Because it was in beta, some of the cards were a lot different. You're looking at stuff like Pyroblast being 8 mana. I think Defender of Argus was like a 3/3. All kinds of things like that. But I found a page that's got all the deck lists of all the players. I wanted to kind of go through it, review their choices, and knowing what we know now, which is what the meta became, what cards are good, what cards are not so good. So this is definitely before a lot of things were kind of unearthed. There's no Miracle Rogue, there's no Zoo. I just took a quick peek here, and, well, it's very different than what the Classic meta is right now. So this page here, first, greets us with the greatest picture of Artosis that I've ever seen. This is probably the worst picture. It's so bad, in fact, that I actually went to Google image search to see if I could find anything worse. Even him here with this mustache looks better. Like, I have no idea where they dug this picture up. But Artosis was actually the one who won the tournament. He is like a StarCraft guy, played StarCraft 1 and 2, still plays Brood War today. Actually, a really great stream that he runs still. But he has a Magic the Gathering background, so it's not that surprising that he actually ended up winning it. You can see here, this is what the bracket overall was. These are all the players, right? Day 9, Wreckful, Hafu, Kripp, Trump, Husky, Noxious, and Artosis. And eventually, Artosis edged out Kripp here in the finals. And if we go down here, this is all the decks that everyone ended up playing with. So I figured we'll just kind of go through one by one and see what we got. So Husky's lists here. Now he's a StarCraft guy as well. Everyone's got three decks here, and his first one was a Hunter, a Beast Hunter, it looks like. There's a lot of things that I'm expecting to be similar through these. I know Yeti was a very popular card, Azure Drake, Defender of Argus. There's some of those that tended to make their ways into like every single deck that you've seen back then. But for sure, some very strange choices. I mean, a Bloodfen Raptor, something you never really seen run. Young Dragonhawk, the dream of being able to buff this thing with Wind Fury, deal a ton of damage. Scavenging Hyena, yeah, like lots of beasts you just really don't see run back then. Now, I can't remember, but it's possible that Unleash the Hounds was actually 2 mana at the time. I think it used to be a cheaper card, which did just make Hunter better overall. But yeah, even some of the removal tools, Multi-Shot, Arcane Shot, I can't see this deck performing all that well. But of course, I'm thinking of it in terms of the meta and the decks that we would normally see now. So we'll have to see what kind of stuff it's up against. Now here, onto his Warlock list. Interesting. At first it looks almost like it's going for the Handlock style kind of things, right? A couple Molten Giants, you got Jiraxis, lots of removal through spells. Okay, it's like it's Handlock, but now we've got Voodoo Doctor, some of these Swamp Ooze, Spellbreaker, Blood Imp even. Very strange choice. Only one Defender, right? No, what is it? Sun Fury, the 2/3 Taunter. Really not a lot to make this work. This is another one I just can't see doing that well. Strange that there's also no Drakes, no Mountain Giants, anything like that. Just going for that Molten Giant synergy. So hard to even really say what this deck was trying to accomplish, other than, pull off some Molten Giants, drop Jiraxis because he's cool, and hopefully win with his hero power, I guess. And then we got a Warrior one, a pretty aggressive Warrior here. I do remember seeing some stuff like this on Ladder. I don't know if it was in beta or just kind of early days of Hearthstone. But yeah, you'd go with these Arcanite Reapers, Bloodsail, Corsair, if it could highlight the okay, I don't remember South Sea Captain, but Bloodsail Raider for sure. I do remember that kind of stuck in the deck. So a few things here that seem kind of weird, especially like a Brawl, very defensive card for what looks like a very aggressive deck. I don't know, it looks like he's going for some kind of board control-y stuff here. But this isn't like too far off from something that I actually saw being somewhat decent in the meta at some point in kind of the early days, especially before Zoo and everything. So yeah, right, charging weapons. I can see what it was going for. I could see that winning a game or two. Let's go over to Kripp next. Now Kripp is turn 8 mage. So turn 8 mage, that must be implying he's going for Pyroblast as his finisher, right? Running 2 of them. It was 8 mana at the time for 10 damage. Very, very good card. So just from these spells, it starts to look like, oh, this is going to be a little bit more like a freeze mage type thing. But then he doesn't have any of the freezing components of it. You know, no Doomsayer, Frost Nova, anything like that. In fact, it's just a very like solid core of minions. This kind of mid-range minion list. And this is what I'm expecting to see a lot of. I remember Shattered Sun Cleric in tons of decks. Yeah, Dark Iron Dwarf was another, Azure Drake, Argent Commander, right? Just solid cards. And I guess this must have been, people just hadn't really figured out, you know, what direction do I want to take a deck or a class or something like that. So they just put in this solid core of cards and then fill it out with your class cards as far as spells and really, you know, high value minions like this Water Elemental. So I think a list like this, I can see why Kripp got to the finals. A list like this is just going to be solid, good spells, good minions, and if other people are using kind of the same core, well, Mage ends up being a pretty good class when it's got an 8 mana Pyroblast. Priest, though, okay, a little bit surprised to see that people were even trying Priest back in the day, but I guess they didn't really know it was that bad. Same thing if there's no Zoo, or maybe there's no real aggressive decks that could kind of kill this before they got to their removal. Maybe you're kind of okay, but this is very top heavy, right? Mind controls, only 1 death, very interesting. I got the board clears, 2 Holy Fires, and then again, just kind of a solid core of minions. Yeah, nothing too shocking there. Even something like Temple Enforcer, which in Classic, 6 mana, 6/6. Get another 3 health. Just pretty good value for a 6 mana card. You know, I can see that. And the rest of these, yeah, just kind of solid minions. Blade Master, something you still see when people try to make Priest work. So, okay, decent list, same sort of core of stuff. Now, this one looks a little bit different. Paladin. Okay, Sword of Justice, again, going for lots of value, right? If you can actually get all the charges out, it's 3 mana, you're adding +5/+5 to all your minions. Maybe you take the odd swing with it. Tons of value, but very slow card. It makes it very hard to run now that the meta's kind of solved. But pretty aggressive overall, right? We're looking at Divine Favor. We've got these Leper Gnomes, Argent Squires, Abusives. Pretty solid aggro list, honestly. Like, not really optimized for what we have now, right? Like, I don't think you'd run the Sword of Justice at all. Spellbreaker, I see lots of people running Spellbreaker. You know, if you're using silences, typically it's the Owl instead. But a lot just don't even do it. Sea Giant, a bit of a weird card as well. But pretty much everything else here is like very much runnable. Again, Redemption kind of stands out, but I guess you're trying to hit the bubble on like a Crusader or something. Yeah, not a bad deck. I can see why Kripp made it to the finals for sure. All in all, those 3 look decently competitive. So Hafu, I don't really know what Hafu's like background was or anything going into this. I know she was a very strong arena player, at least by like you know, the time the game had really gotten established. But up until this Innkeeper Invitational, I'm not sure if she played much Constructed or not. So kind of curious to see this. Again, very same, even to the extreme, this very solid core of minions, right? Shattered Sun, Novice Engineer, Chillwind Yeti. I think Novice Engineer even had 2 health back in beta. Not quite sure. Harvest Golem, crazy good value. Yeah, just lots and lots of value here. Nothing real crazy. Good spells, kind of similar to Kripp's list. I could see this one doing pretty well. Not too bad anyway. A Shaman, okay, first Shaman. Good to see somebody trying Malagos, but not generally a card that ever really works. You're gonna, do that with like a Lightning Bolt and then be unable to do anything after that. So, guessing that this didn't work too well. Forked Lightning, you know, something you don't really see a lot of ever run, but most of the other spells, they look pretty standard. 1 Axe. I mean, it's like a decent mid-range list. I'll backpedal a bit. 2 Earth Elementals, kind of uncommon, but I think they're fine. Everything else is a decently solid core of mid-range stuff. You probably drop the Malagos, get rid of the Forked Lightnings. You could just put in a few more solid kind of mid-range things there, but yeah, that's an okay list. I could see it pulling a few wins. And finally, another Paladin list, Bubble Hearth. Okay, so I guess this is another Divine Shield type thing, so Sword of Justice. I remember everyone kind of loved that card. Only 1 Divine Favor with, you know, it's a pretty early curve. Really not a lot to close out games. I feel like this deck has a bit of an identity crisis. Like, it's a little more on the aggro side. It's not quite late game enough to really be a true, like, mid-range. Certainly doesn't get into control. You'd like to see, like, a Tyrion or even just a Rag as a finisher if you're going to go for kind of that mid-range thing. Or I think you just have to, you know, cut back on, like, why even have Argent Commanders put in? Yeah, no Leper Gnomes, anything like that. You know, Noble Sacrifice you don't really need. Yeah, it just seems like a weaker list than what we saw from Kripp's Paladin. So Artosis here, the champion. These were, I guess, the best decks or the best piloted decks in the whole tournament. So again, another Paladin, something that if you ran a tournament today with Classic, you wouldn't really see, right? Paladin not considered a very good class in Classic. Again, Sword of Justice, people just love that card. I mean, I remember trying to run it. 2 Lay on Hands, so this is very, very control heavy. 2 Avenger Wrath, 2 Lay on Hands. Yeah, some very expensive stuff. Couple spell breakers that you don't really see, but Bloodsail Raid are actually a card that I really like in Paladin that I don't see much of. Argent Protector, Knife Juggler, Imp Master, a bit weird as well. Kind of has some synergy with like a Blessing of Kings or something like that. But I'm guessing it's there for the Sword of Justice primarily. Everything else pretty solid. Yeah, so pretty control heavy, and I think in a format where people really haven't figured out how to optimize aggressive decks, these control decks must really dominate. You're actually able to pull off 1, maybe 2 Lay on Hands pretty consistently. Yeah, it makes a little bit of sense why this would work, and it's certainly not optimal, but not bad. E-Cop, another name I haven't seen in forever. Artosis' E-Cop Warrior. Okay, pretty aggressive list. So kind of similar to the other weapon list we saw from, I think it was Husky back there. This one's running a Gorehowl, but really leaning into the weapons, right? With like upgrade, if you could ever pull off an upgrade on a Gorehowl, very, very nice for face damage. But again, gonna happen very late, so gotta make sure you don't die early. But There really hasn't been much other than, I think, Kripp's Paladin list that I would say is a solid aggro deck to punish something like this. So you could actually maybe pull off those combos. Wrathy Weaponsmith, okay, yeah, Lepronome, Raging Worgen with the Warsong Commander. Very, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I can see this being solid in the format, even though this is something that likely wouldn't work on ladder at all. So far, it doesn't seem too bad. Again, though, another Priest, and winning the tournament while running Priest. Priest and Paladin, the two classes, I would say, are kind of bottom of the barrel in a solved meta. Now, he's going a lot harder, again, really on these control-heavy decks. So, double Mind Control, double Holy Fire. Still only one death, though. Very interesting that people didn't really seem to run too many high-end minions. Northshire Cleric, Spellbreaker being okay. Oh, a Light Warden, okay. A little bit different. Injured Blade Master, which you'd expect. Arcanine, Argent Commander, people just love throwing them in. Seen this Abomination a few times now. Not really a good way of dealing with aggro. You know, it's a card that you think could work, that you could maybe slot to decks, but generally speaking, Sen'jin just ends up being a lot better on 4. And he actually runs Velen, which is strange with no Mind Blast. I don't really know what that's for. Potentially you could pull it off with a Holy Fire if it lives for another turn. Holy Smite, I guess. Or yeah, maybe you're taking advantage of the hero power. Kind of interesting, but yeah, I can see he goes for some kind of control-heavy decks, and they look not bad, at least stacked up to the other ones we've seen so far. Now, Noxious with the Refrigerator Mage, okay. 1 Pyroblast, which I feel like you just have to see when it's 8 mana. Spellbender, that's a little bit different. Now, we've got like Blizzard Cone of Cold. This is developing into something a little bit closer to Freeze Mage that we've seen before. But then like missiles, not so great having like missiles with no Antonidas. Frostbolt, Fireball, so lots of damage from spells. And then yeah, it seems like it just goes for that core set of minions. So no one had really figured out Mage so far. I seem to remember, we'll see what it looks like, but I seem to remember Wreckful had kind of developed a decent Freeze Mage list here, so maybe we'll get some innovation over there, but yeah, nobody else seems to have really figured it out. Son of Athene, oh boy, yeah, all kinds of strange names today. Sword of Justice, at least it's only 1 this time, so maybe not so crazy. Blessing of Kings, Noble Sack, a Divine Favor, 2 Avenging Wrath, no Lay on Hands. Huh. Kind of strange. We've got like a Leroy, we've got a Ragnaros, Sylvanas. This also feels like it's having a bit of an identity crisis. Kind of feels mid-rangey, but like it doesn't really know its win condition or something. Just puts in a lot of solid cards, you know, some good stuff on the early side of things. Knife Juggler, Fairy Dragon, Swamp Ooze, probably pretty good in the format. We've seen some Warriors. But then it gets a lot slower in the middle. Tries to win on, I don't know, these and Leroy. Yeah, something about this just feels like it didn't really know how it was trying to win. I'm not a big fan of that deck. Would not have expected it to do well in the format. And now we've got a Shaman. So let's see, we've got another Forked Lightning, bit weird. 1 Bloodlust, pretty smart, only running the 1. I think if you are doing a Bloodlust list, that's kind of the way to do it. All the other spells, pretty good. Nat Pagle, now I think Nat Pagle, at this time, was at the end of your turn, you had a 50% chance to draw a card. So with that being said, I'm surprised we didn't see Nat Pagle in like every deck, because it was busted before they changed it. It was deciding games. Kinkmaster Overspark, another one. I believe at this time you used to be able to target the minion that would transform. So you could, you know, point at a Reg or a Tyrion. Even if you get the 5/5 Devilsaur, it's like a really good silence or potentially a polymorph along with a 3/3 body. Though I think it was a 2/2 body for 3. So very interesting. 1 Earth Elemental I think is fine. Faceless, okay. So this is really, really far on the control side again, which seems a bit strange with the Bloodlust. I mean, you can generate totems with your hero power a lot, but yeah, just a bit too far on the high end. I actually think if he would have just done a couple of swaps here, I don't know if he needed to get rid of some spells, because the Feral Spirit, that's fine. Yeah, get rid of the Forked Lightning. Probably get rid of the Twilight Drake. Just get a little bit more early game at that, like 2, or even like Argent Squires at the 1, something like that. I actually think this deck could be really close to being really, really good. Even on ladder, but certainly in the format, I think this would have been a really effective one. So that's interesting, and interesting that I don't believe it did do very well. I think, yeah, Noxious just got knocked out in the first round, 3-0'd by Artosis. Alright, Trump with his mage. Okay, so this is a little bit different. 1 Pyro, 2 Fireballs, 2 Frostballs, 2 Polymorph. Not that crazy, but we've got Blizzard for some board control. But just a really minion heavy. I guess it's not that much different than the other lists. Same kind of minions, except, add in a Sylvanas, and I guess he goes a bit heavier on the Yeti, that kind of thing. Again, seems like an okay list, kind of comparable to the others. Don't love it. The Hipster Mage Druid, okay, interesting. 2 Starfalls, 2 Claws, alright, cards you really don't see, but again, really, really heavy on minions. All 3 of these decks seem to be, 19 in this last one. Similar cards, only 1 Ancient of Lore, just crazy to see. 2 Keepers at least. Let's see, Sylvanas, Thalnos, yeah, seems like you really like those cards. Makes sense, they're very, very good. What else do we have here? Yeah, just kind of a normal distribution of minions here. Okay, Priest, trying it again. Shadow Madness. I think the first time we've seen that, 1 death. It seems to actually be the right call, because there really isn't a lot of high-end minions in this format, or in this tournament, rather. A couple mind controls. He's got a Rag, a Ysera. Okay, so very late game heavy. Doesn't really have a lot to contest the board with early. His Brewmasters are kind of interesting. Maybe going for extra draw with the Engineer. But yeah, I think this is one that would just end up dying a bit too early. Even in the format, we used to see that a lot with Priest. So decent decks all around. I can see them performing okay. But none of them really wow me with like their win conditions or their, the fact that they're so light on spells. I think really works against them. I'll check out. Okay, so this is Wreckful, starting with the Priest. Okay, I think. Oh, very interesting. So on the ability side, he's doing 2 deaths. First one we've seen do that, but again, very control heavy with 2 mind controls. We got a Thought Steal, 1 Holy Fire. I think I like this a fair bit. Rag and Ysera, not too bad, but a Ventrico Mercenary, like super interesting to see that. 1 Yeti, the 2 Clerics, 1 Fairy Dragon. Yeah, same thing. I feel like just not enough on the early end of minions to really contest the board against some of these. So I think it's close to being decent. Like I like his spell list a bit, but yeah, I think it's just gotta get some more on the early minions there. Wreckful's no Tyrion Paladin. Also surprising to see. Yeah, have we even seen a Tyrion yet? I'm not sure. Very strange. 2 Sword of Justice, gotta do it. 1 Lay on Hands, I like. 2 Divine Favor, okay, so implying it's a bit more aggressive. Shattered Sun, Argent Squire, Young Priestess, okay. Something we usually don't see unless it's Zoo, Knife Juggler, Imp Master. So it looks a little bit similar to Artosis's, but a little more emphasis on the early minions. But I still think, there's no leper gnomes, anything like that. This feels like another one with a bit of an identity crisis. It's like kind of mid-rangey, but I'd rather you just lean into the Divine Favor. Of course, again, knowing what we know now, you can go really, really hard on aggro with Paladin and actually make like a somewhat viable deck. Alright, so the Mastermind Mage. Yeah. This is how I remember it. This is kind of the inception of Freeze Mage, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 Ice Blocks, 2 Pyros, which at 8 mana is just crazy good. 2 Cone of Cold, 2 Frost Nova. Yeah, so pretty close. We're seeing a Geomancer. I believe that set up the famous board state, right? 11 plus 4. Could have Pyroblasted and Frostbolted Kripp in, what was it, the semifinals? Yeah, here in the semifinals. Looks like he lost 3-0 anyway, but a big missed lethal opportunity in the format. But most of these other things, like Cold Light is interesting in the list. Now we opt for like just the Acolytes and potentially Novice Engineer. I've seen Loot Hoarders still in it, but usually we're not giving, the opponent any draw. Kirantor also a bit weird. Mana Worm gives you kind of some early pressure, but no Doomsayer, which is quite interesting. Very interesting to see no Doomsayer, but yeah, you can see this is where these decks are starting to get developed. Really, really good idea. And a missed lethal looks like he had the opportunity to win a game. So pretty solid list. Gotta think it's pretty good in a format where we haven't really seen any true control warrior either. Now day 9, I've been going back through old VODs. I actually watched some of the videos where he had prepared these decks, and he said he was in a bit of a rush. He got knocked out in the first round. These are a lot different of lists, but a lot of fun to watch him play it on ladder. But I don't think any of them were really good, so this will be a good refresher for what's here. So this was an aggressive Paladin list, which I actually think, well, I'm very surprised there's no Divine Favor. I really thought that there was Divine Favor in this deck. Strange, especially with the Blessing of Wisdom for card draw. You would really just think Divine Favor would be better. But I remember he would drop this Jungle Panther a lot on ladder, try to buff it up with these. Even a Hand of Protection. Yeah, really leaning into the bubbles in this deck. Don't think it was very good. I think it's the right idea to go for a aggressive Paladin if you're going to run that list. But yeah, no Divine Favors and probably just not aggressive enough. Also no Leper Gnomes. Yeah, didn't do so well. So this Glacier Pod deck, as he said, he named it, Glacier Pod because Glacier, it's super slow, and Pod because it's like a nature thing, and it's a druid deck. So, 9 minions and 21 spells. So you're going to get lots of good spells here, but also some questionable ones, like 1 Naturalize. Okay, I can see running 1. It's going hard, though, with like Nourish, Starfall, a card you don't see much of. Good for board clears, though. Love to see the Wild Growth. Really strange that we actually didn't see any like Force of Nature, Savage Roar combos. Like Druid is so good in the format, and I really thought that it was pretty straightforward how good it was, with Wild Growths and Innervates. Things that, we haven't seen in any of these other lists. The Force of Nature combo. Ancient of Lore, we saw someone running 1. Just very, very strange that it wasn't figured out at this time. But again, with it being so early in beta, it's not a huge shocker. But 2 Healing Touch. Like, he's really just trying to get to the late game. And then as far as minions go, he's going to get some spell damage there. A couple Ancient of Wars to stall things. Just, a couple big bodies. A little bit of spell damage there as well. And Keeper, pretty solid card. Not a great deck, not at all, but I do think it has that advantage of if you go very hard into control and people haven't really figured out the aggro meta, there's a chance that you can actually win those games because while they're just not optimized, and these control cards can get tons and tons of value. So don't love the deck, don't think it's that good. Very entertaining at the very least. Nice to see some different cards there. And then he's got a Shaman list here. Power Overloading. Alright, well, let's take a look at the abilities first. A couple of lightning storms. I'm not sure that we saw lightning storms in the other decks, or maybe I just glossed over it. Nice to see them here. Forked lightning, yeah, I just don't think is a good card. Never see it run anymore. But all the minions here I kind of like. Again, would like to see a little bit more emphasis on the early stuff. Like if you just cut those forked lightnings, put in a couple Argent Squires, I think this deck gets like infinitely better. But actually a pretty solid list. I would think that this would be his best list of the three. I don't even mind Earth Elemental, which I know a lot of people don't run unless they're gonna actually combo it with all the, what is it, like Ancestral Spirit or whatever, bring it back to life, all that kind of stuff. Crusher's Shaman. But yeah, I actually think there was a lot of potential in these Shaman lists. Lots of solid class cards. Good spells as far as removal goes. Some good minions in like Fire Elemental. You're getting Drawn, the Mana Tide, Unbound Elemental, very good as well. Flame Tongue. Yeah, I really could see these working well in the format. So that's it. That's all the decks we had. Again, here's the bracket as it is. I just thought it'd be fun to go and take a look. Congratulations to Artosis for winning the whole thing. But yeah, just very cool, I think, to look back at the roots of Hearthstone, see how the whole deck building process evolves over time. Maybe some food for thought if you're going to go ahead and do some more experimentation in Classic, especially coming up on the new season here. Maybe some of these decks can provide inspiration, even just for fun if they're not all that competitive. But yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to take a look at today.